Welcome to this episode of Maven Capital Partners podcast Invested. My name is Laura Boyd and I'm a television presenter used to interviewing some of the biggest stars in the world, but this podcast is a little bit different. Here I'm going to be chatting to entrepreneurs, business leaders and people at the helm of some of the UK's fastest growing companies. It's a brilliant insight into not only their business, but also what makes them tick, how they got to where they are, their success, their failures, and everything in between. Now, today I'm delighted to be joined by Liz Ashall-Payne. She is CEO and founder of ORCHA, the organisation for the review of care and health apps. It's the world's #1 technology provider for delivering safe digital health, and Liz is fascinating. What an inspiration she is. You're going to love this, so have a listen. Thank you so much for joining us on the pod. I'm going to kickstart this podcast with the way we do all of them. I want to know how you begin your day.
Oh, well, thank you. And it's lovely to be talking to you. So how do I start my day? Every single day does start the same. I get a cup of tea and I have a cup of tea in bed thinking and planning about the day before the house wakes up.
Is that important to you to have that kind of chill time to get your head into the day?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I have a family, I've got 2 children, and as soon as they're up, my brain is filled with what their needs are. So just having that time to just consolidate, right, okay, what are the priorities for today? And what do I absolutely have to do?
Yeah.
And yeah, I suppose it's quite nice to have, I'd rather get up earlier and have that time than get up and then just start rushing.
What time are you getting up at?
Um, Probably about 6:30, maybe 6:30. The boys tend to wake up about 7:15, so it gives me that enough time to just plan out the day before they get up. But I'm definitely not a 5 o'clock starter. I do it when I have to, but that is not me.
I'm the same. I like that kind of golden hour between 6 and 7 where you feel like you've got your own time. You can grab a cuppa and kind of get ready for the day ahead. Are you good at switching off? Because I always think in business, it's so hard in any business, especially now with phones, to put the phone down and think, that's it, time out.
Yeah, no, I think that if the truth be told, I describe my work as my hobby. I love it. So looking at what's happening in the market, looking at what's happening in the sector, checking my emails, conversing with people, it doesn't really feel like I need a separation from it. It just feels it's an extension of me, I suppose. And maybe that's because I'm one of the founders. So it's my baby in a way. But that isn't to say that I don't then spend time with my family and then don't put my phone down. I do. Every evening, we always have, well, the evenings that I'm here, we always sit down and have dinner together. And nobody's allowed the phone. And we have one holiday a year where I put my phone in the safe and my husband locks it away and I'm not allowed to know what the safe key is. And I have a week of the 2-week holiday without my phone. And that's as much for me to be able to just read trash and just be completely present and properly switch off. So that's the only time. But I miss it because it's my passion.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. I'm the same. It's hard. It's good for you, but I think there is always that, oh, what's going on, isn't there?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the very start. Tell me about young Liz. So growing up, what were you into at school? What were you kind of doing?
Okay, so it's really interesting because people ask me about the story of ORCHA, and I actually always start it from the age of about 15, 16. And we all get asked the same question when we're about 15, 16, and that is, what are you going to be when you grow up? And you get asked that question, and I've got an 18-year-old now, and it's a slightly ridiculous question because nobody really knows what they want to do and what job they're going to do. Um, and I didn't know either. But what I knew I wanted to do was I wanted to help people. And that sounds really basic. But for me, that was always something that I really felt passionate about.
Yeah.
And I remember being at school and being asked in one of these lessons, which is now called PSHE, if you had a superpower, what would it be? And mine was to help people who were ill and help sick people. Now, at the time, I knew I didn't want to be a doctor or a nurse because I'm really squeamish, but I was really interested in health and helping people. And that makes me sound like a martyr. I can tell you I wasn't. I had lots of friends. I really enjoyed going out. I probably wasn't the most academic person. I passed all my exams and I got my GCSEs and A levels, but I was always sociable. But my passion was I wanted to help people. And so that took me into getting interested in healthcare roles. But like I said, not a doctor or a nurse.
By sociable, do you mean a party girl?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's probably what I'm saying there. Yeah. Yeah. Writing your
Fun to know
assignment
one.
because you were out last night. Yeah,
I love
definitely.
that. You need a bit of that in your life. But
100%. Yeah.
you left school, and then what path did you go down? Did you go
So,
to
so
university?
I did. So, as I say, I was really interested in health, and my mum and dad were really supportive. But my dad said, "Right, you need to try out some of these jobs." So we started looking at, well, what else is there in health? And I was finding therapy, so physiotherapy, and then speech therapy. And I thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting, speech therapy. I have always would do better if spoke less in class. So that could really work for me. So I went and spent a couple of days. My dad organised for me to spend a couple of days with a speech therapist. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to go and do this. And so I went to Birmingham, did my degree, came out of that degree. And I thought, great, today I'm going to help people. And then this is really where the start of my story to ORCHA really starts, because at the end of the first day, I thought, well, what was that all about? I've seen 6 patients. What about everybody else? And that was my passion starting then. How can I help more people have access to healthcare? Now, this was before technology. So at this point, the smartphone hadn't been created. We didn't have computers. I'd never seen a computer. Nobody had sent an email. And so it was pre-technology. But yeah, that was the journey I went on.
Did you always have a kind of business mind? Did you have that kind of entrepreneurial side
Well,
to you?
I think I probably did on reflection. I didn't realize it at the time. But what happened was I went into my clinic and you have a caseload. So you might have 300 patients who need to be seen either for assessment or therapy or a review. And I thought, I can only see 6 patients at once. This has got to be changed. So I got really interested in how can we strip out waste? How can we manage things differently so that maybe I can squeeze in another 2 patients? And if we all do it across 50 people, 50 staff, 50 speech and language therapists, we can see many more. And actually, how about we bring in a different workforce? So speech therapy assistants who could maybe do some of the therapy so that speech therapists can really focus on assessment. And then I was thinking, well, what about group therapy? Could we not provide group therapy? And I work with children. So I was like, can we not train parents to be able to support the children? So I always thought very differently. And I also wanted to transform the pathways. So tracking out what happens to a patient as they come through the service. And it was actually really transformational. So I really got stuck into that, and we changed the waiting list from about 21 months to 11 weeks within about a 4-month period by doing these things differently. And so that gave me the bug. And then I got asked, well, look, Liz, that's been amazing. We can now do that in this service and this service. And if you can think of any part of health or care, I've worked in it and I've tinkered with it and improved access to it, from dental services to incontinence, mental health, primary care, hospitals, care homes. And so I probably was, like I said, I didn't really think of it as entrepreneurial at the time.
Yeah.
But I remember quite vividly, though, looking at the cost and the cost benefit analysis and thinking, the public purse, if we're paying for these services, we need to think carefully about how much those services are costing, and sitting with clinical staff and saying, do you realise that one appointment costs X pounds? And what we should be thinking as clinicians is, at the end of that appointment, if we're not willing to ask that patient to pay for that money, we need to question ourselves whether it's been value add. So I probably always had that approach, and like I say, wanting to do things differently.
Well, it sounds incredible. And you do that across so many departments. Where comes the point where you go, I can make this into my own business? Where does that happen?
So this was around, so I'd started to work at like board level within the NHS, and I led on, it was called quality improvement, which basically meant that you led on these change programs. And then I did my master's, I started doing some lecturing at university, and I was asked if I would take a role supporting other system leaders to do the same. So I started working with these think tanks and going around board to board and thinking, what are the enabling requirements to achieve better health outcomes for the population that they're trying to serve? And at the time, we started to see technology emerge. So the smartphone had arrived, we were now sending emails, and I thought, this is really interesting. This is an enabler. Technology is an enabler to achieving better access and better health outcomes. So I thought, that's really fascinating. And then fast forward a couple of years, and I was asked to lead on digital health, can you believe, for some new organisations that were set up. And these new organisations were set up by the NHS to drive the adoption of new technologies, both to support health outcomes, but also generate wealth for the local area. And the reason that's important is because wealthier populations are healthier. So there's a direct intrinsic link with health. And that was when I thought, this is the answer. We've all now bought the smartphone. We currently, at the time, had about 80,000 health apps available to us. My job was to get these health apps and technologies into the hands of patients so that people could benefit from them. And we could support small companies who had these amazing technologies. I thought, this is brilliant. What an amazing job. And it was a disaster. And the reason it was a disaster was because I was back to being a single person. I knew about these health apps, I knew about the opportunity, and I was talking to individual people. And I thought, this is not scalable, it's not systematic. How do I enforce or embed a system that allows for rapid access and adoption? And I actually, at that point, decided to leave the NHS. I've been in the NHS about 20 years. And I thought, but I was a bit obsessed with this problem. So I then went working, I set up my own consultancy company. And I started working internationally as well as in this country. And I thought, somebody's cracked this problem. Somebody's cracked the problem of how you get healthcare systems to adopt innovation and digital health. And they hadn't. I worked across Europe, North America, the Middle East. Nobody had done it. And ultimately, it was because nobody knew what technologies to trust, and nobody knew how to embed them into healthcare or get them to patients. And so I started thinking, well, how do we distribute other things in healthcare to benefit people and to benefit the economy? And the obvious thing to think about is drugs. And so we've all been prescribed a drug. Before that drug gets prescribed to you, it goes through a checking process, which is checking to make sure it's safe and effective. It then goes into the curriculum so that would-be prescribers are trained in these drugs. And it then enters a book called the British National Formula. And you may have seen your GP look in that book and just have a check. That's the BNS. And then that doctor will prescribe it. And it's either a paper prescription or a e-prescription that goes to the pharmacy, and then you go and collect the drug. And that's then about reimbursement. So that's how the drug gets tracked and paid for. And I thought, that's what we need for digital health. At this time, we had about 160,000 health apps. In the world of drugs, we've got 80,000 drugs globally. So we're already at double. And at the minute, people are just downloading anything from Apple App Store and Google Play. Healthcare systems are buying anything. We don't know if they're safe, effective. So that was the founding idea, really. And I thought, if we have a system that assesses and builds trust in a product, educates would-be prescribers of digital health and health apps, embeds these tools into a digital formulary, and provide a prescription infrastructure so that we as patients can receive these technologies direct from our healthcare professional, that's a proper, systematic and scalable approach. So that was where the idea came from. And I was obsessed with it. But I wasn't obsessed with building this business. I already had my own business. I had a consultancy company. I decided to bring in associates. It was going very well. Anyway, I talked to anybody who would listen to me talk to about this problem and this idea, and I tried to give it to people. I was like, no, you could do this. If you do this, because I just wanted somebody to fix it. Anyway, I had a chance conversation with a guy who wanted me to help him get his product into the NHS as a consultant. And I went to see him and I said, your product's fine, but the problem you've got is not your product. The problem is there is no system to receive and distribute your product. And he said, I think there's a business idea in that. And I said, yeah, there probably is. He said, write me a business plan and I'll give it to some investors. And I said, okay. And I am a bit of a geek, really. And I quite like writing things down. So I thought, right, I'll go home, wrote this thing out, sent it to him. No NDA, not concerned about somebody else stealing this idea, because I just wanted somebody to fix it.
Yeah.
Anyway, a week later, I got a phone call and a landline rang. The landline never rings. And a voice said, is that Liz? And I said, yes. And he said, it's Sir Terry Leahy. And I said, oh, okay. He said, I've had your business plan sent to me. I wanted a chat.
Wow.
So I know it's like a made story, really. And so we had this Dragon's Den style conversation for 30 minutes. And if I'm honest, he was asking me questions that I just felt completely out of my depth answering around profit and loss, market sizing, things that just I hadn't really ever come across. Anyway, at the end of that conversation, I thought, well, no idea how that went. But anyway, the following week, I got an email to say that Terry and a man called Bill Curry of the William Curry Group, who was initially involved with ASOS and Boohoo, lots of online retail, said that they would invest at seed fund to help me get started. So it was very serendipitous how it happened.
I mean, that is incredible. It's just when I think about that you talk about kind of scaling up and sorting things out, but that is such a massive leap from where you kind of initially came from to combining, you're bringing in this massive tech world and dealing with huge organizations. It's just amazing. How was it for you? As you say, someone who likes to be in control, comes up with these ideas, it's your baby. How was it taking on external funding?
I always say to anybody interested in starting a company, don't get obsessed with the solution, get obsessed with the problem you're solving, because the solution will keep changing, but the problem is the same. So I was obsessed with solving the problem. So when I was invited to have Bill and Terry join, and don't forget, I hadn't started this business. It had a name, but there was literally nothing apart from what was in my head. So I thought, well, if I'm honest, my initial reaction was, okay, I'm going to have to do this. There's no other reason why I wouldn't, because I just wanted the problem solved. And so I was obviously grateful for the opportunity. And I didn't have, that much money in the bank just waiting to be invested. So, very grateful for that initial investment. And what it gave me the opportunity to do was to build a minimum viable product. And that minimum viable product was the world's first digital health app library that was full of 100. So at the time when we launched, it was 100 reviewed products that was publicly available. And we launched with our first paying customer, which was Langston South Cumbria NHS. So we launched with our first paying customer, and they promoted that to their population. So for me, the big thing was solving the problem, And the second thing was achieving impact,
Mhm.
both from a health outcome perspective, but also supporting these amazing technologies that cannot be found on the open market and getting them distributed to support the economic development. So I think I've always been focused on that rather than, oh, it's my baby.
So Liz, tell me where Orca is at today.
Okay, so we currently are 8 years later. We have three companies headquartered in Warrington in the northwest of England. And then we also have a company in Utrecht in the Netherlands, which is our European base. And we also have a company in America based in New York. We work with 13 different governments assessing and evaluating technologies on their behalf. And we do that through our technology platform, which allows us to assess the different requirements and standards, and then work with hospitals and the providers of healthcare in those countries and other countries to create digital health libraries and formularies so that doctors can pick and prescribe the right app to their patient via text message. So it's been an amazing journey and incredible to see the team grow.
Liz, from that young girl who loved a party, who got by in uni and just wanted to help people, to now being a businesswoman at the top of her game, who's won numerous awards, who has a global company that's helping people on a global scale. How does that feel? And can you believe it?
So somebody said to me, "Oh, you must feel like you've achieved it." And honestly, no, I've got so much more work ahead of me. So I feel like we're only scratching the surface. So it was always meant to be a global opportunity, and of course, we're in 13 countries, which is great. But there's a lot more countries and a lot more depth within those countries that we need to get to. So I feel really proud and privileged is probably the word that I would use the most. But there's a lot more left. There's more
What's
to
been
come.
what's been your proudest moment though?
I think this is going to sound really random. One of my proudest moments was when this doctor came to tell me about this thing called ORCHA and how amazing it was. And I thought, isn't that great? You don't know
Yeah,
nothing.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I don't know if that's my proudest moment, but it was definitely a bit of a pinch me moment. I think again, something I hadn't necessarily expected, but watching the team, come in as graduates, get buy houses, get married, have children. There's something so privileged about knowing that the work that you're doing is supporting people to have their lives.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the other things, the biggest metrics we track on a day-to-day basis at ORCHA is the number of lives we've impacted. And seeing that number increase every day is massively it makes me feel really, really proud. And I think that there's so many things I could say. Also, seeing the team work so hard on a vision that I had, I'm really privileged.
Has there been, well, there will have been difficult moments, and
Yeah.
how have you overcome them? Because you radiate like joy and enthusiasm and drive, and I'm just getting that over Zoom. So I can imagine in person,
Yeah.
you seem like a complete go-getter, the kind of person you want at the head of your business. How do you handle it when things have gone wrong?
So I think it's a mental state, and of course things always go wrong. So success isn't about never falling over; it's about keep getting up. That's how I vision it. But I also always I try and enjoy the ride and try and see every opportunity to learn and develop. So there is turbulence. There's always going to be turbulence. There's turbulence in life, not just in business. But when I'm going through a period of turbulence in the business, I envisage a waterfall, and sometimes that waterfall is small, and sometimes it's massive. But when I'm going through that turbulence, I know it's not going to last forever. We will come out the end. And this is going to sound really cheesy, but it's true. After the waterfall, the water is always calm and deeper. Now there'll be another waterfall down the way again, but you learn so much and you take that learning onto the next stage of the journey. So that's how I mentally deal with the turbulent times, and I try and enjoy the ride,
Yeah.
if that's if that makes any sense.
Yeah, to learn from it, I guess, because it's all a learning
100%.
process.
Yeah, and I I feel that's one of my privileges. Sometimes they're hard lessons to learn, but you always learn.
Best advice you've ever been given?
I think that the best advice is just be you. And what I mean by that is I think so many people, particularly now, and I know I felt like this probably till I was about my mid-30s, is you feel that you should look and sound a certain way. And of course, in business and in technology businesses, again, there could be a certain look and sound. And I don't look or sound like that stereotypical individual. And that's okay. Be yourself, and be true to your values. That's probably the best advice I had. And if I could go back and say that to my younger self, I think I could have got there faster because I was a little bit of the mind that I should look a certain way or sound a certain way.
Me too. It's so true, isn't it? You look back and you think, oh, all that time I wasted just
Yeah,
trying to be what I thought people wanted to be. And it's,
and it's exhausting.
yeah,
It's
it is.
exhausting.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're completely right. Embrace who you are. And yeah, finally, what are your hopes? Where do you want to be? You've grown ORCHA in these 8 years. What is the
Mm.
ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal is that every digital health technology is downloaded with ORCHA. And that sounds really egotistical, but the reason it's not is because what that means is you will get a safe, effective tool that can actually help you. And I think that we will know that we've been successful when we're in a position to be able to help third world countries that wouldn't necessarily have access to these tools. And the reason that that will tell us that we've been successful is for a whole load of different things, but it'll mean that we are sustainable and have scaled to a certain point that we're again in that privileged position. So I think those are my two big focus areas.
Do you think will you ever take a step back? Do you think you'll ever be able to completely switch off from it? Because in all these interviews that I've done so far, most people have been like, no, there doesn't seem to be like a kind of end goal. It seems they're so passionate about the business. They're like, no, I want to keep going. I can't see that end point yet.
If you focus on the problem, what happens is you fix a part of that, but then you just go, okay, now I can see that there's this little bit here that needs fixing, and I need to now fix that, and then I need to fix. And of course, I know that the area of business that we work in, it's a wicked problem. You know, a healthcare and people accessing healthcare on a global scale is a wicked problem. It's a macro problem, and of course, the economic side of the equation. So I'm sure I'm going to keep finding problems to try and solve. The only thing I'd say, and I've said this to my board, if anybody ever came along and I thought you can do this better than me, I'm okay with that. I'll still be a driving force. I'm still passionate about it, but I want the impact and the mission to be had, and whoever's best to get us there is the right thing. So it's not that I won't be on the journey with them, but I'm okay with bringing in amazing people.
Liz, I think you are incredible. I think the business sounds incredible as well. And it's been so interesting to hear about how you got there, and long may it continue, and long may you share your story because it really is inspiring. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch up with you in years to come and hear more about it.
Well, thank you so much.
Before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. And if you want to find out more about some of our inspirational investees, then just head along to mavencp.com. I'll see you next time.